This is Lifestyle with Safira Kaka on CII Radio.
I suppose if you had to ask anybody the question, where do they see themselves in 5 or 10 years' time, the answer would be, I'd like to see myself happy. The definition of happiness has changed over the years. Nowadays, people equate happiness with wealth, the accumulation of material possession. People seem to associate happiness with entertainment, having a good time, and having fun. That, however, is not true happiness. Pleasure is a temporary, fleeting feeling, whereas happiness is an emotion that comes from deep within us, not from something external. And this is deeper and longer lasting. I'm reading to you from the book called 30 Ways to Happiness. The author of the book is Mufti Yusuf Mosaji. And really, this book has been such a pleasure to read. It's an easy read, and it's something that can immediately uplift the spirits. So chatting to us a little bit more about this book is Mufti Mosaji. Mufti Saab, Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the program.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and jazakumullah khair for the opportunity.
Mufti, I'm sure you can agree with me. Everybody is on a quest in some way or the other to become happier versions of themselves, especially because we've had a lot of time to introspect during the lockdown. So you wrote this book called 30 Ways to Happiness. What inspired you to write this book?
As you indicate, Sister Safira, we've passed through a very difficult period with the lockdown and with the restrictions that were imposed on us, and our lives that we were accustomed to had been totally changed and turned upside down. And there was a point where people were almost reaching breaking point. People were becoming disillusioned. People were becoming frustrated after having spent, the initial part of the lockdown in their homes, and then it was extended and further extended, and we were coming towards the month of Ramadan, and the mood was just down within the community. And at that time, I was looking at what could I do to uplift people, to provide some sort of inspiration, to provide some sort of motivation. And after reflecting on a variety of topics that I could tackle during the month of Ramadan, I sort of came across the idea of discussing happiness. And it all stemmed from there, that 30 days of Ramadan let me during each day look at one possible way that could lead us to happiness, or one issue that is stealing away our happiness. So it was something that came about during the month of Ramadan, and it was as the result of the mood that the country was experiencing, the Muslim community was experiencing at that time. And it was an attempt to sort of lift people's moods and try to provide some sort of direction.
Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about the process. It's 30 ways. I love some of the chapters. The ones that I've earmarked was the expressing gratitude. I especially love the sharing in the joy of others. And my favorite is the du'as that you've included for happiness towards the end of the book. What was the process like? Was it intense? Where did you draw your inspiration for the process of writing this book?
It was a comprehensive process in the sense that I try to look at the concept of happiness in a broad way, in an all-encompassing way, not looking at it specifically from a religious point of view, mm-hmm. or from a personal point of view, or from just a social point of view, but in trying to incorporate all of that into the book. So it encompasses your spirituality, it encompasses your personal growth, it encompasses social life, and that is the idea, to keep it as broad as possible. Now, what I looked at is, what are the things that are within one's capacity, and what are the things out of your capacity. And if we look at, as human beings, there's a certain degree, there's to some extent, there are things within our capacity, things that we have control of, and then there are those things which are out of our control. And many times what we find is that we focus too much on those things which are out of our control. Mm-hmm. And as a result, it leaves us wanting, it leaves us in a state of unfulfillment, it leaves us in a state where, we feel that we haven't achieved what we wanted, and that is why we're unhappy. When we look at what is it that is within our control, there's a small margin for that. There's other things out of our control, and that is where the concept of submitting to the will of Allah, being pleased with the will of Allah, being pleased with taqdeer, that is one concept. But when we look at what is within our control, then that is the realm for searching for our happiness. And as human beings, there are different core emotions that we experience. We experience happiness, sadness, anger, We experience surprise, disgust. These are the core human emotions. And as you indicated in the introduction, that the one emotion that we all desiring and we all searching for is happiness. And it is something that is very encompassing, yet it has become very elusive. People are searching for it all over. There have been thousands of books that have been written on it. There have been lectures at universities on it. Scientists have been studying it. There has been a UN day has been dedicated to it. Google Analytics suggests that it is the one thing that everyone is searching for. Yet it is the very thing that has become elusive. It's the thing that we just seem to not be able to get our hands on it, or not able to experience it as we would like to. And it is something that we can gauge, that we all desire, in the sense that when you speak to people, you'll hear very often someone will say, when they've got to make a decision, do what makes you happy. The person will suggest to the other person, or I wish you a happy life, or your happiness is most important. Despite all the conversation, all the effort, it still seems to be eluding us. So looking at, what is it that would take us towards happiness, and also what is it that is stealing our happiness? The style that I adopted in the book is that I looked at various verses of the Noble Quran, and also various ahadith of the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And I looked at how this can lead us towards attaining the happiness that has become elusive. And I sort of divided that into the different chapters. And then together with that, I added certain studies and, some anecdotes and personal experiences. And as you indicated, that it's a very light read. It's an easy read. It follows, a very smooth flow to a particular point. And it's short chapters. So in that way, it becomes a short piece of motivation that someone can just pick up and read each chapter. That can, one leads into the other, but it can also be read independently.
You speak about, as human beings, we have control of our certain aspects of happiness. And I want to refer especially to chapter 6, where you speak really nicely about, in this chapter, about limiting your social media time. Do you believe social media is one of the contributing factors to why we're not happy as an ummah?
Social media in itself, it is like, in simple words, like a knife, that it can be used for good and it can be used for bad, and depends on how we utilize it and regulating. So it's not necessarily just social media being bad on its own, but it is the manner in which we utilize it. Overusage, constantly viewing other people's lives and creating a comparison. People only put the best of their lives on social media, which are just few moments or seconds, and then we compare our entire lives to those moments, and obviously our lives will fall short, and in that way it creates some sort of happiness. Whereas the principle of the hadith of the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he advised us and he said that look at those lower than yourself and don't look at those on a higher level than yourself, because you will find yourself wanting. And there's a quotation and a experience of one of the great scholars, Sayyidina Abdullah bin Mubarak rahimahullah, who said that he used to be in the company of the wealthy and the very affluent, and he found that he was very miserable because whatever he had, they had better than him. And then he changed his company and he associated with the less affluent, with the more poor people, and he found that brought some sort of contentment and happiness to him. There's also a statement of Sheikh Sadi rahimahullah, who said that he complained to Allah for not having shoes, and he felt very miserable and very dejected about that. And then he saw the person who didn't have any legs, and he realized that just having legs is a bounty. So what does social media do at times is, one thing is that we tend to compare ourselves to the certain aspects of the lives of people who we follow. That is the one thing. The second thing is that it detaches us from the reality around us. So a person sits with their phone on social media while they with the family enjoying their supper, and they're not able to enjoy the conversations with those who are around them. They're not able to really enjoy the various delicacies that they have on the table, to slowly chew and appreciate the different tastes that the food has to offer, the different texture of the food, because you seem to be detached and far away. And another aspect also is that when you constantly on social media and you're in the company of other people, it sort of gives an indication that you're not happy to be where you are. You'd rather be in a place far away. So social media is good in the sense that it has connected us with people who, before the advent of social media, we may not have connected with them on the level that we are able to. But in some ways, it has disconnected us from those around us. And, in that sense, we need to ask ourselves that what is the use of connecting with people thousands of kilometers away when you're not able to have a really deep conversation with your spouse or with your kids. And when we talk of connecting, we don't mean connect to the same Wi-Fi,
yes,
but rather we're talking about connecting with deep conversations, and being able to actively listen to one another and to provide that human need for conversation and that human need for emotional support.
That is spot on. Other chapters that I've actually earmarked, my favorite chapters, Smile Often, The Joy of Worship. But my absolute favorite is the one on expressing gratitude. So I know as an author, it's a difficult question to ask you because an author, they always say their books are like their children. But which chapter of yours in the book is your favorite?
The particular one that I really, enjoy, and it's a concept that is close to my heart, is the concept of bringing joy to others. And when you bring joy to others, you actually multiply your own happiness. But it's got to be done without the person's forcing you into it. So sometimes someone comes and asks you to help and you are begrudging, and then you're not really up for it at that moment, and then you help the person. That won't bring you the joy. It is an instance where from your heart you assist someone, and you assist them just for the sake of bringing happiness to that person, and you expect no reciprocation, no acknowledgement, no jazakallah, no thank you, because sometimes what happens is when we help others, and as human nature, we desire that acknowledgement and that gratitude, and we don't get that, and it brings disappointment. So to be able to, with a clean and open heart, for the sake of your own happiness, to be able to assist someone, and in that way, you multiply your own happiness. And I think that is one of the concepts that we even lack in our community, where we're not willing to help people genuinely for the sake of uplifting ourselves and them. And we always have it it's like a bargaining tool that, I'll do this for that person because I never know when I may need a good turn in the future, and when I may need that person's assistance. And that is why, or that person, has the gateway to some prominent person, or may be able to assist me in the future. That's why I'll assist him now. And it sort of becomes like almost like a transaction where I give you this and you give me that at a later stage, or I never know when you may I need your assistance. But when you leave all of that aside and you do it with a genuine, sincere heart, with genuine well-being and being a well-wisher for the other person, then there's a certain joy that comes into one's heart. And that type of joy, that cannot be truly appreciated until one experiences that. And there's a quotation that I had included there that, if you want happiness for an hour, then go fishing. And if you want happiness for just a longer period, then take a nap. But if you want happiness that will last a lifetime, then bring happiness to others.
I love
so
it.
Really, that is something that we need to understand and reflect on.
This is essential reading, especially for the month of Ramadan. So in closing, can you tell us a little bit about the launch date and the book launch that's going to be happening at the CII stores, and where this book is available from, and how our listeners can get hold of this particular book?
So Alhamdulillah, it's been a long process of compiling the book, and we've had our hiccups with the printers, and that is always the case.
Yes.
So we've been given small amounts and from the printers, and it's been coming through in drips and drabs. But our aim is to officially launch during the month of Ramadan, in the sense to have it all by all the different leading bookstores across the country. And Alhamdulillah, it is available at the CII stores, inshallah. And in terms of when we'll be able to actually have a launch, the stores and other places, we'll give further details about that at a later stage.
Wonderful. Before we let you go, Mufti Saab, any closing words for our listeners on what you'd like them to take away after reading your book?
wherever you are in your life, there's something that inshallah you'll be able to draw from this book. It can be incorporated into some sort of a daily ta'aleem during the month of Ramadan, just 5 minutes or 3 minutes every day that you read one chapter. And inshallah, you'll find that it will uplift you, it will lift your spirits, it will sort of, give you another perspective on life. We'll realize, and I think the most important thing that we need to realize, and I think the most important message from the book is that happiness is not by attaining all that you desire, but it's by realizing what you have. And each one of us have the tools, we have the resources in our lives to increase our own happiness levels. There's a scientific study that shows that by just slowing down and taking a deep breath and thinking about things that you are grateful for in your life, that in itself increases your happiness levels by 25%. So gratitude is an important part of it, and realizing what we have and appreciating that will definitely increase our happiness levels. And I think, as a concluding remark, I make dua that Allah Rabbul Izzah grants everyone happy, fulfilling lives, that Allah continues to increase everyone in this and grant us the bliss of Jannah in this world, inshallah.
Ameen. Shukran for joining us on the show this morning, Mufti Saab. We wish you all the best with the launch of this book. Hopefully our listeners can get a hold of it and it can make an impact, a positive impact on someone's life. But thank you for joining us on air this morning. Until we meet again, you take care, and Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
And that's the book, 30 Ways to Happiness.
This is Lifestyle with Safira Kaka on CII Radio.